Hello everybody, this is Nick Newman with the Conscienticon, where we share practical, spiritual, occult wisdom. And in today's episode of the Conscienticon, we are going to be discussing my favorite tactics from Sun Tzu's work, The Art of War. Sun Tzu was a philosopher in general who wrote The Art of War, and he was alive around 544 BCE. That is approximately 1,400 years ago. And to give everybody some context here, the most advanced technology they had back then was wheels on axles and crossbows, which were a really high-tech thing at the time. So how badass was Sun Tzu? When Sun Tzu became general, the king of Wu commanded him, as a test of his skill, to take 180 of his harem or personal concubines and turn these women into soldiers. The king of Wu thought this command would be a funny test. However, Sun Tzu took it very seriously and divided the 180 concubines into two groups, one being the commanders and the other being the officer. The two company commanders that Sun Tzu chose were the king's personal favorite women. Upon giving his first command to the women to turn right, all of the women giggled and laughed at him. So he took a moment and he told the commanders that it was their fault that the officers did not follow the command, and so he said, "We'll try this again." And he said, "Okay, turn left." And again, the women proceeded to giggle and laugh at him. So he ordered that the two commanders be executed right there. The king of Wu was really shocked about this because these were his two favorite women. However, Sun Tzu told the king, if any soldier in my regiment were to disobey a command, I would do the same to them, and these are soldiers. And so they proceeded and executed his two favorite women. And then two of the next best officers within the rank got promoted to commander. And legend has it, they never disobeyed a command from him ever again, and these women were turned into fine soldiers. So how can we use the art of war in our daily lives? Many things today that you wish to attain are going to require the skills of a commander. They may require you to lead a group of people. You may be competing with other people in order to get promotions. War is still a major part of every one of our lives, from competitive video games all the way to dealing with people who wish to physically harm you. For some very unfortunate people in this world alive today, war is a very vicious part of their reality. Let's proceed and go over my top 5 favorite tactics from The Art of War. Number 1. Research yourself and your enemy. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. A long time ago, I desperately needed a car and I was trying to get it financed. Luckily for me, I had read 2 books, one being Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference, which is a book about hostage negotiation skills, and the second book I read was The Art of War, and this principle helped me tremendously. The first thing I needed to understand were the players involved, because buying a car from a car dealership is a lot like going to war. My goal was to get a car for under $6,000 with less than 50,000 miles on it. And before I engaged with the dealership, I went to my personal bank and found out how much credit I could have been loaned from the bank, which turned out to be around $7,000 for an automobile loan. Now, the bank's motivation was to give me a loan for an asset that would either stay at the same value or appreciate in value. So they were not going to loan me money for a bad car, because if I failed to make my payments, the bank would own a bad car and lose money. And finally, we had to understand the motivation of the dealer. And the dealer's goal is to sell me the worst car they have on the lot for the maximum amount of money they can get out of me. And that is always their goal. So in order to prepare, I took 3 days off of work in advance because I knew that this process could end up being rather drawn out. Car dealers will try to slow down the process in order to make you uncomfortable and rush to a conclusion that you don't really want. So by taking 3 days off of work and telling the man that I only had a day to find this car, I had time pressure on him and a liberation on my part so I could just leave at any time. I also took another individual with me, so the dealer would have to convince 2 people that whatever deal they proposed to me was right instead of just me. And I was the primary communicator, and that other person would tell me by pinching my finger or squeezing my hand that they liked or they didn't like the proposition. I also had a helicopter mechanic as my friend, so I could test drive the vehicle and take it to him for him to look at it and allow me to scrutinize the vehicle when I returned in order to get a better deal. The dealer was trying to get the maximum amount of money from me, and upon telling me that he wanted double the price of what the Blue Book value was, I told him to consult my banker because I was only going to take loans from them, because of course he was going to finance me himself through his private financer. Of course, because he wanted to make the most money he could for the worst vehicle he could sell. Upon communicating with my banker, who wasn't going to buy a bad asset, he had to concede and give me the car for the $6,000 that I wanted. I walked away happy, and it only took 1 day, and I had 2 days after that to enjoy my vehicle. When going to war, research yourself and your enemy. Know the desires and motivations of each side, including yourself. My second favorite principle from the art of war is to understand the value winning the war will give you. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. There is no instance of a nation benefiting from prolonged warfare. War is when you have 2 clashing forces trying to gain purchase on reality. They cannot coexist. So in order to create the reality that one side wants, there are many sacrifices and an exhaustive amount of energy that will be consumed during a clash. This causes an exhaustion of possibilities with both parties engaged. One of the goofiest examples of this is the lobster war of the 1960s. The Brazilian government refused to allow French fishing vessels to catch any spiny lobsters 100 miles off of Brazil's northeastern coast. France had recently lost territories along the coast of Africa, and this created a shortage of lobsters in France. These fishermen decided to go off of the coast of Brazil and fish around there in order to get more lobsters. However, the fishermen in Brazil were very upset that these French fishermen were coming so close to the coast and fishing in their waters. So when Brazil asked France to have these fishermen leave, France decided to send a huge warship over to protect these fishermen. Brazil thought this was unacceptable behavior, so they decided to send some ships of their own. And this almost became a war over lobsters. Later on, this conflict was resolved when France decided to remove their ships, and Brazil extended the territory around their coast from 100 to 200 nautical miles. In this scenario, the gaining of lobsters was going to cost France the lives of their men in a potential war with Brazil. Whenever creating any sort of conflict in your life, it is critical to understand what the point of the conflict is and whether or not you can live without the value that you are challenging or the value that someone is challenging you for. Your time and your life is precious, so make sure you use your resources wisely. My third favorite principle from Sun Tzu's Art of War is the idea that defense implies lack and attack implies abundance. Attack is the secret of defense. Defense is the planning of an attack. Bravery without forethought causes a man to fight blindly and desperately like a mad bull. Such an opponent must not be encountered with brute force, but may be lured into an ambush and slain. Defensiveness in people around you is almost an automatic tell that that individual has harmed you already or is planning on harming you. Individuals that we encounter that are confident and are brave indicate that they have an abundance of resource because for some reason they can handle that risk. And these are the people that we admire and we follow. My favorite example of this is Shaolin monks that train with real weaponry. These monks train not because they are violent, but because they are ready to have the capacity for violence if engaged or they need to defend people around them. Which group of people would you assume are more violent? Shaolin monks or Wall Street brokers? Meditate on that one, my friends. My fourth favorite principle from the art of war is plan all the way till the end. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. This principle coincides with my last video on the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, and it is in fact the 29th law, plan all the way to the end. If you don't know what the ending is going to be, or at least what the ending is that you desire, and have no route to get there, then it is critical that you do not proceed until you see the route. This is reflected in the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, that 80% of your efforts should be going into your planning and 20% of your efforts should be divided into the execution of your plans. There was once a Russian king who met a wandering Sufi. Sufi is a mystic or a sage. And the Sufi said, "I'll give you guys some good advice if you give me 100 dinars. The nobles with the king thought this was really goofy. However, the king said, "Give the man the money. I want to hear this advice." And so the man said, "Never begin anything until you have reflected what will be the end of it." The nobleman said, "Hey, it's really great that he asked for that money up front because that's pretty dumb." The king said, "Nah, you know what? This is good advice and I want to see it every day." So the king ordered that his dinner plate be embroidered in gold, having the saying, "Never begin anything until you have reflected what will be the end of it." So the king could see this on his plate every day he ate. And some time passed, and it was time for him to see the surgeon so he could have his blood letted. It was common back then for people to remove substantial amounts of their blood in order to remove bad humors from the body. But the king didn't know that the surgeon who was bloodletting him was bribed by a plotter to kill the king with a poisoned lancet. The plotter had told the surgeon that once the king is dead and I become king, I will grant you position as my prime minister. So legend has it, as the surgeon was ready to drain the blood of the king, he needed a plate or a bowl in order to capture the blood. So he grabbed the plate of the king and he read the words, "Never begin anything until you have reflected what will be the end of it." And in that moment, the surgeon thought, if I poison the king, this man is surely going to kill me immediately after. So the surgeon professed to the king what the plot was, and the king had the plotter executed, and he had all his noblemen show up in the room, and he said, "Listen guys, do you think this advice wasn't worth 100 dinars? Now, before I reveal my favorite section of the art of war, I'd like to stop and thank the patrons for supporting the Conscienticon. I appreciate you guys so deeply, and I'm very excited to have you guys continuing on this journey with me and helping the network grow. You're doing phenomenal currently, and I wish you all the very best. And if you too would like to become a patron, the first 103 patrons will get a video posted on the Conscienticon about any topic that they wish me to discuss, and I will post it there permanently. I will see you there, my friends. Finally, my favorite piece of advice from the art of war actually comes from 5 faults that will make or break a general. Sun Tzu says there are 5 dangerous faults which may affect a general. Number 1, recklessness, which leads to destruction. Number 2, cowardice, which leads to capture. Number 3, a hasty temper, which can be provoked by insults. 4, a delicacy of honor, which is sensitive to shame. And 5, over solicitude of his men, which exposes him to worry and trouble. Number 1, recklessness, which leads to destruction. If you do not have a plan till the end, don't engage, because engagement itself is reckless. Number 2, if you are experiencing cowardice, it is because you have not laid your plans well enough, and by being cowardly, you expose yourself to capture and defeat from an enemy. Number 3, you must keep your temper in check. Your temper and your anger and your rage are results of a lack of resource, not from abundance. 4, if you are exceptionally prideful, you are susceptible to shame, and this fear of shame will stop you from doing the best things that you can for your commander. Number 5, if you worry too much about the comfort and well-being of people directly around you, their troubles become your troubles, which stops you from implementing the focus that you need on your plan. Let people fight their own fights, and only engage when their fight disrupts your plans. If this content helped you in any way, please like and subscribe to the Conscienticon and join our network. In fact, this video is a consequence of a comment left in one of my previous videos. And if you leave comments, I will respond to them and I will take them into account. And it might just lead to me producing a video that you would want to see. I thank you all in advance for helping us relieve others of cognitive dissonance and for helping the sharing of practical spiritual occult wisdom.